Hello and welcome to Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I'm your host, Megan, and with me is my fabulous co-host.
Hi, I'm Amanda.
Welcome. We are your messy, imperfect, secular, progressive homeschool mom friends here to keep it real. If you are looking for a genuine homeschool community that values inclusivity, where women's and trans rights are non-negotiable, love is love, Black Lives Matter, no human is illegal, you have found your people. We do exist in the homeschool world. It is a beautiful thing. So like, follow, subscribe, whatever the thing is that's on the platform that you're on, do that thing so that we can stay connected and we can support one another on our homeschooling journey. We are so glad you're here.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So, if you are new to the podcast, this is our weekly book club episode. We drop 2 episodes each week. There's a regular podcast episode with some kind of homeschool related topic, and then there's a book club episode. Now, hear me out. Okay. We release a book club episode every Thursday. If you're thinking, shoot, I didn't read the book. I don't have the book. I don't even know what book they're talking about. I need to just turn it off before I'm in too deep. Don't worry. Don't do that. You are totally fine. You don't even have to read the book to be a part of our book club. We're cool like that. We show up, we chat about the book every week. You're welcome to read along with us if you want. That's totally cool. But it's also totally fine to just tune in for our kind of Sparks Notes style discussion of the week's content. Spark Notes is, like Cliff Notes for those old people in the group like us. Truly, whatever works for you, it works for us. But we hope you'll stick around and enjoy sort of reading a book with us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I will notice that this week you gave me the section where I announced the book and the author's name because I think you're tired of stumbling through the author's name, and I'm just there.
Gosh. I butchered it every week from this book, so it's all yours.
I'm on it. I can't promise you I'm going to do a better job because I've got my own pronunciation, but here we go. So this week we're finishing up The New Menopause, which is by Dr. Mary Claire Haber. And then next week, we've got a new book, which we're super excited about. We're leaning into what is commonly known as Black History Month, although we like Black History 24/7, 365, with Soul School by Amber O'Neill Johnston. And we welcomed Amber on the podcast last week. And if you haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, oh my gosh, I could listen to Amber read the phone book. She's amazing. She's just absolutely incredible. So we had a chat with her. And we had done kind of a cursory read of her book, an advanced copy of her book before our podcast interview. And so now we're excited to really get in there and break down the book and chat about it in our book club episode. So if you are interested in either The New Menopause or Soul School, we'll put links for both of those books in the show notes below. If you want to go and check them out, we would love to welcome you a little deeper into the fold. But yeah, you can totally just come and listen to us chat about books too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we're picking back up on page 193. This was one of those books that was hard to break down because some of the chapters were like 140 pages long and then some of them were shorter. And it's like, how do you break that down for a book club, right? So we're picking back up. We're in the middle of the Menopause Toolkit. And if you've got the hardcover book, it's 193. And the header is called The Potential of Probiotics. So if you are following along, that's where our starting point is for the day.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, I'm going to say that if you have typical female hormones that will decrease in your maybe 30s, but for sure 40s and 50s, I think that you should just go ahead and get this book and look up every health issue you have in this book before you go to the doctor. Like, it might not be in here, but surprisingly, there's a very good chance it is. And also, there's a very good chance that whatever doctor you go see isn't going to relate your new health concern or issue with decreasing estrogen. So you might not get any answers, but at least you'll know that it's probably related to estrogen, and how you approach that with your doctor might look a little different. I'm shocked at how many things are in here. We are not covering all of the things that are listed by any stretch of the imagination. So definitely, if you have female hormones, this is probably a good book to just have in your arsenal as you age.
Okay. So I had a comment, but first I just want to say I mentioned in our Tuesday episode that we are currently pet sitting. We travel with my son's service dog, who's a cute little Bernedoodle, and we are pet sitting a Bernedoodle as well. So it's been kind of a fun week to watch them play and do that thing. And sometimes WrestleMania just spontaneously kicks off. They napped throughout our whole last episode of recording, which was amazing, but it's WrestleMania time. So if you do happen to hear some background noise, I apologize. Amanda, if it gets too much and you can hear it, just let me know because off they go. So yeah, I mean, I kind of felt like I didn't have as many notes for this section of book club, and I felt a little bit guilty about that. But the reality is that this entire menopause toolkit is the description or name of the condition or symptom, and then it's like the breakdown is estrogen drops, shit happens, eat well, here's some supplements, here's some pharmacological help, the end, right? And it just repeat. So to your point, it's helpful to have the book because it's literally built like a dictionary or a reference material, like an encyclopedia, where, for example, I just opened the book to kind of a random section, right? So if you're like, wow, why is my hair so thin? It's really not what it was before. I feel kind of, postpartum-ish here with my thinning hair. And you can look it up. And so, for example, there's a section here, thinning hair, and it specifies on head. It says C androgen-induced conditions. So there's nothing here specifically on thinning hair there, but it'll tell you where to go. Then there's thinning hair, C skin change. Oh, no, sorry. Then there's thinning skin, C skin changes, tingling extremities, C crawling skin sensations. So even if you're looking up a symptom that you're circling the right concept, but you don't have like the exact name of the condition or whatever the case may be, the book will guide you to exactly where you need to be. And then each section, it kind of breaks down what that condition is. Then it has strategies for dealing with it, pharmacological options, tips for minimizing it. There's strategies for dealing with things. So there's all these different things. And it really just becomes a super helpful reference book at that point.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I do. Okay, so back to probiotics. We're on page 193. So the bottom line is they may or may not help. She does give some recs of which strains seem to be most important for women, according to a study that was published in 2023 in Current Nutrition Report. Probiotics are one of those interesting things. I have a functional medicine doctor who was really big on like probiotics don't work the best if you take them every day. And if you are taking them to boost your immunity, you should cycle probiotics. And so you should be on them for a couple of weeks before you travel or those kinds of things, and then go off of them. And then, in this like the idea of like replenishing, kind of like you don't fertilize a garden every day. You fertilize a garden before you plant. And it's that same kind of idea. That is not what she's talking about in this book. And this book is really like taking it as a daily supplement. So I'm not really sure where I fall on that or what that means or what that looks like. And I think this is one of those cases where, definitely talk with your doctor about what you're trying to achieve, what you need out of it. There are different types. I know that. I personally take one that helps keep me regular because I've reached that point in my life. And, like if I cycle it the way my functional medicine doctor wants me to, I'm definitely not regular. So, like what are the trade-offs and what are what are you trying to get out of it?
That's interesting. I haven't heard that. So that's an interesting perspective. My kind of hesitation with probiotics, if there is a hesitation, is they're not regulated. So none of that stuff is. And so when I go to the supermarket and there's just this wall of probiotic there, and it's like, you don't even know if what's in them is supposedly in them. The label says like, so she recommends, specific strains and stuff like that. There's nobody even testing to make sure that those strains are in those pills. Nothing that you buy supplement wise has been evaluated or tested for efficacy, or even tested if it says that there's, 1,000 micrograms of something in a capsule. Nobody's even checking to make sure there's 1,000 micrograms in there. Nobody besides the company that makes them potentially doing that, right? And then, I'm a cynical human being, right? It's like the company put them out and they're like, oh, well, these ones fell short by like 30%, but we've already made them and we'd lose X amount of money if we scrapped them all. So like, they'll be fine, or something like that. But Because there was that thing with that lady who died of ephedra like years and years and years ago. And they tested, there was this one lawsuit where they went to all these different stores that sold the drink that she had consumed, and they tested them all. And not two of them had a matching amount of ephedra in them, right? Some of them had like next to nothing. Some of them had like 4 times what they were supposed to have, right? Like it was all over the place. And so that's really concerned with things like probiotics. And she's so heavy on supplements in the book here. And I'm like, that's great. But like, I mean, are you just literally taking stuff that's going to pass right through you or is ineffective, or in some cases, it could even be harmful and you just don't even really know it because it's not causing major harm. And so nobody's looking into it. So I don't know. I get a little squirrely when it comes to stuff like that, but
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. There are definitely better options than others, right? And a little bit of internet research will show you which companies, which brands tend to test better at like a lot of times it'll be like university level studies or things like that where they've gone in and done the research and like, oh, this place is pretty consistently what it says it's going to be. It's, there's a range, but it's always like pretty close and like probably avoid this brand because it seems like it's never in,
all over.
like it's all over the place kind of thing. But yeah, you're totally right. There's not like actual federal regulation, although with the way things are going right now, there might not be.
We might not have those on pharmaceutical meds anymore.
Maybe it'll kill you and maybe it won't. Like, good luck.
The next note that I had was on 194. We talked a little bit last week about this word I had trouble pronouncing. Genitourinary syndrome, GSM, genitourinary syndrome of menopause. Totally might be pronouncing that wrong. And she talks about the fact that oftentimes symptoms of this particular syndrome go untreated because people don't want to talk about them. And so it's leading to like sexual dysfunction and urinary incontinence and things like that. So I talked about it in our regular episode this week, but if you've not listened to the regular episode, there's a thing here that talks about bladder, and it says supportive tissues in the region can weaken, leading to urinary incontinence. And it talks about estrogen deprivation being a part of it, which is part of this whole section, right? It's really estrogen deprivation, and not at all a sponsored plug, but I found this program online. It's like a virtual pelvic floor therapy. She does still say, go see a pelvic floor therapist, get an evaluation, make sure that that's actually the issue, right? Online pelvic floor program and strengthening, amazing, called the Buff Muff. It's by this woman who goes by the Vagina Coach, and you can access it from anywhere. And she has like online community, and she does live meetings and Zoom where she'll help people and answer questions and stuff like that. So if you're in that category, try it, check it out. It's not expensive and it's good strategy.
Yeah. And we totally won't be able to use any of these clips on social media because it'll get us like shadow banned so fast, which is also ridiculous, right? Like, how dare women talk about taking care of vaginal health on social media? Goodness.
Exactly, right?
Shut that down. Yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg's like shivering just thinking about a vagina. I can't.
All right. So on page 200, it's under the category strategies for managing high cholesterol. She's talked about this before, which means we've talked about this before. But if this is the first time that you're tuning in, menopause is very likely to noticeably increase your cholesterol levels. It doesn't have anything to do with a change in diet or a change in activity or anything like that. Dropping estrogen, very likely to increase your cholesterol levels. My comment is a little snarky. Usually she's all about the anti-inflammatory diet, which is a whole other thing I'm a little like on. But this time she actually recommends an antioxidant-rich diet for managing high cholesterol, which in fairness is not that different from the anti-inflammatory diet. But I still thought it was interesting that she recommended, like, her recommendation changed slightly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The next comment that I made was on 202. She talks about this supplement called berberine. She says it's a naturally occurring compound found in plants such as golden seal and barberry. It has long been used in Native American and Chinese medicine to treat a variety of conditions. And it's interesting because all the time we hear about, these ancient Asian origin treatments and things like that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure that there's a ridiculous amount of validity to it. But then what is the same percentage of validity when we've mass produced it, dried it, encapsulated it, left it on a shelf for like a year? Like that's not the same thing, right? We're not going to get the same efficacy that people who are using this as part of this holistic life approach are getting. It's just, it kind of makes me like, because Western culture will pick up on something that's there and be like, oh, we could totally, we're going to write articles and we're going to advertise it and we're going to put it in capsules and nobody's even checking that the berberines in the capsules. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I can't. It's so broken. So anyway,
Yeah,
that was my thought when I read that one. I was like, you could end up going down all these different things, but part of the reason that that's working there is the way that it's being used and the way that it's being integrated.
yeah. I mean, it's definitely not the mass produced. And so again, a thing of access, right? Depending on where you live, you might be able to go to a great integrative school or to someone who practices traditional Chinese medicine and get, more. I'm not sure if authentic is even the right word, but the better version. But I mean, that's really limited, right? That's going to be super limited based on where you live. I know I've seen it a lot on the West Coast. There are a lot of good practitioners and schools and things in the cities that I've lived on the West Coast, but I don't really recall seeing it in most of the other places I've lived in the United States. So
not when you head home in the summer in Missouri, you're not finding
I'm not seeing a lot of traditional Chinese medicine practitioners there. No.
Go figure.
Funny that. All right. So my next comment was on page 207. This was under strategies for alleviating hot flashes. Menopausal hormone therapy is the gold standard, right? So if you've been following along at all, you know that. If you're just tuning in, she's a pretty big proponent for menopausal hormone therapy. She did go into, though, in June of 2023, the Menopause Society released a position statement ranking non-hormonal options on the basis of quality and the number of scientific studies supporting their use. I found this list pretty interesting. So strategies that are proven to help alleviate hot flashes are cognitive behavioral therapy. I was surprised by that one. Clinical hypnosis. I was also surprised by that one. SSRIs, gabapentin. Yikes on that one.
Yeah, I was a little
like there. Like yeah. I was put on it at one point for some of my issues. I ended up developing a really serious allergic reaction to it. Like that's a medication that it can be good.
Pretty hardcore though.
Yeah, but it can also be bad. So like tread carefully there. And then she lists some other prescription medication that isn't covered by insurance, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce. I was a little disappointed that they didn't cover it in that section, but then she does go on to say that a 2022 study in the Journal of Menopause found that a reduced fat vegan diet with daily soybean intake helped like loads, right? It reduced hot flashes, it helped reduce other symptoms of menopause and produce significant weight loss for menopausal women. Though she does clarify or specify that unfortunately the study looked at reduced fat vegan diet and soybean intake together. So it's a little hard to say which part of that was most effective. I know I personally, if you're listening and you're at all interested, I personally have found that regular soybean consumption does help with my mild symptoms. If you are interested in giving it a try and you have no issue with eating, dried edamame and tofu from time to time, it's worth giving it a try, I think.
Mm-hmm. That is interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So my next comment is on 212, and it's not really specific to this particular section. This section here is talking about strategies for correcting insulin resistance. But really, as I said earlier, each section kind of follows a rhythm where it's a description. And she talks about like nutrition, supplementation, pharmacological, right? So it's kind of the same rhythm. And really, this was just the one where I reached the supplementation section. It was like, how many supplements are you supposed to be taking here, right? Like, I mean, we did this test or this little like Quizlet earlier in the book where we looked at all the different symptoms that each of us had, right? None of us are approaching this from one symptom where you're like, oh, I'll take these 3 supplements and it'll be fine. She's got like 3 to 4 supplements in each section. And if you have 5 symptoms, some of them might overlap, right? But you could potentially be talking like 15 supplements a day. And I just have this vision of a kitchen turning into like one of those end caps at the Walgreens where like it's just the wall of vitamins and supplements, it's like color coded bottles and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, there's just a limit to how many of these things you can take. I mean, the cost of them can get really pricey after a while. And then just the routine of having to do that. It's like, oh my goodness, like it's a lot if you think about it.
No, that I can't imagine, because I know when we were going through fertility treatments, like they suggested specific ones, and there was this whole like, you should look at these. And then I read some book on, like how to naturally help your body, because that's what you do when you're desperate and you look
Yeah,
at
of
all
course.
these things, right? And I mean, there was one point where I had to have been taking like at least 10 supplements a day of all these different things. And they are all, highly recommended. And this is good for this and this is good for that and all this stuff. And when we finally were like, okay, we're done, like, it's not working, it's not happening, like, we're going to close this chapter. I refused to take any kind of daily medication for at least a year. My doctor was like, I really think you need to, I can't. I'm so over handfuls of pills every day. Like, I, you know, so there's definitely that balance. And I don't know how you would convince anyone that you should start these supplements and you should stay on them for 10 or more years. Like, who was like, yes, sign me up. That sounds great. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
And some of them are like magnesium, zinc, etc. But some of them are pretty random supplements that I imagine too. You're having to source some of these things too, where it's, let's add that to our list of full-time jobs.
Yeah, that's true. All right. My next comment was on 214, kidney stones. It's about kidney stones because, of course, something as awful as kidney stones is definitely going to increase when you go through menopause. That just seems fair. So specifically, it's in the category of strategies for addressing kidney stones. And she says, quote, the research in this area is so new that we don't have any evidence-based strategies yet. The exciting thing is that attention is being paid to the significance of estrogen deprivation in women's bodies. We will only continue to know more in the future. And I was just like, I mean, I'm silver lining Amanda. And even I am like, seriously? I mean, like, I guess it's something to know that it's probably related, right? I mean, that's what a lot of this chapter is about. Like, am I losing my mind? It feels like my entire body is breaking down and all of these things are wrong. Like, what is happening? Do I have cancer? Am I like, no, actually, your estrogen is dropping and it is causing dysfunction in basically every system in your body. So there's something to be said for knowing that it's all related to this big hormonal change and it's not just in your head and you're not on death's door. But, like, really?
I know, right? Like, enough is enough.
Yeah, like we females, women, and people with female hormones have been here since the beginning of time. Like, humanity has not evolved the way that it has without like a fairly equal number of women throughout time and history. Like, why? Just why?
Yeah. But we managed to figure out Viagra and Cialis like that, right? I mean, they were on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an important medical advancement.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in fairness, I'm going to say I'm not 100% opposed to Viagra.
But could we get some equality there?
Exactly.
Right? Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm happy for you to.
Interesting side note, right? So when a pharmaceutical company develops a drug, they get a patent for it for like X amount of time. It's like their like prize for going through all the R&D, all the research and development, right? And there are these ways, as soon as they lose their patent, generics can become available and then they don't make mega bucks anywhere. They just make little bucks. So there's all these ways that they can extend their patents. And so one of the ways that you can extend it, ironically, it would be nice if there were female studies mixed in, but I don't think there's too many. But one of the things you can do is a pediatric study. And so when the patent for Viagra was going to run out, they were like, we'll do a pediatric study, which you think like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of, right? Do you know, I forget if it was lung related or heart related, because it's been years since I worked in the pharma world, but they actually found a very viable use for Viagra in premature babies. And I was like, look at that, right? But wouldn't it be nice? Like if they tacked on a women's study at the tail end of all of those, we would find all sorts of interesting stuff,
Yeah,
right?
right.
You know, and it bought Pfizer like a 6-month extension on Viagra. The study didn't cost them nearly what they made on Viagra in those 6 months. And we learned something, a way to help premature babies. So it was interesting. But at the initial thought, you would be like, what the hell are you giving Viagra to preemies?
Yeah.
You have to be like a really desperate preemie mom too. Like imagine being in that position, how horrible that must be, where they're like, listen, this is the only thing we think might be able to and you're like, okay, I'm gonna give my, micro preemie Viagra. Okay. But you'd be so desperate, but hey, it turns out it worked.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, that is the case, right? There are so many things that work off label for something else. And if only half, I don't even need half. At this point, I'd settle for 25% of the effort went into studying how they help women with
Yeah.
any number
Like
of
it.
things, right? Like half would be awesome. It's like that Ruth Bader Ginsburg quote where she was like, how many women do you need to be on the Supreme Court for you to consider it good? And she was like, all women, like for years and years and years, it was all men and that was fine. So why can't it be all women and it be
Right.
fine? Like,
No one questioned it. Yep.
yeah, exactly. All right. So actually just on the next page, so on 215, she goes into menstrual cycle changes. I think that this is one of those things that the vast majority of us experience and we are not really told about it and it's not really covered well. So I just wanted to run through some of what she says here. One thing that I thought was interesting, I brought this up in our regular podcast because we did like a life with perimenopause, menopause episode. But she says that generally, once you have gone 60 days or more without a period, you are likely to enter menopause within 2 years. I thought that was an interesting fact because it's important to remember that just because you go without a period for a few months does not mean that you have hit menopause. It's super, super common to skip a couple months or sometimes even, 6, 7 months and then have a period. And that resets your 12-month clock of like countdown to official menopause. She goes through a list of things, and I'm just going to read them off so we're all on the same page. It might be useful. So she says heavier periods, that's more likely in the late transition. She talks about lighter periods are common in this whole perimenopause transition. Longer cycles are also more likely in late perimenopause. Shorter cycles are more common in early perimenopause, and we also talked about that in our earlier episode this week. Irregular spotting, common throughout perimenopause, just in general. Missed periods, again, that could be just a missed period. It might look like longer cycles, just depending. And then changes in menstrual symptoms. So the intensity of cramps, worsening PMS, all of that good fun stuff, right? She did also make another point that I thought was really important. If it has been 1 full year or more since your last period, you are postmenopausal. And if at that point you have any vaginal bleeding, it is considered abnormal and you should be evaluated, right? Like, I probably would not have necessarily worried about that much just because I feel like the run up to it is so erratic that you're
Right.
just like,
You just be like, oh, it's more of that.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But that's that line, right? If you make it a whole year and then you have bleeding, like, please go get it checked out and make sure that it's not something else because it could be a symptom of something quite serious.
I highlighted that as well. I was like, oh, great. Something else for me to panic over.
Oh no.
Oh, if it's not that, it's going to be something else. So don't worry. It's fine.
Oh. There was one other thing. So she goes through all of this, and then she has in all of these sections, right? Then she goes into strategies for addressing these changes. One thing that I did pull out is that she says aspirin or ibuprofen can help relieve pain and actually reduce bleeding during menstruation. And this is totally true for me.
Me too.
One of my docs looked at me like I had completely lost the plot when I said that. Like, no, that's not how that works. And I was like, no, for me, when I have like those really heavy days where like I really can't leave the house, like it's that heavy. If I stay on like a really good rotation of Advil, it slows things down enough that I can do some things. Like, I really prefer to not be doing a lot of things,
Right.
but it can definitely help. So,
So I haven't tried Advil. I'll have to try that because for me it's ibuprofen, and there's a remarkable difference when I'm popping Midol and ibuprofen and all that versus not. It's
mhm.
night and day.
No, yeah, it does a huge difference. I was lucky enough that while we were traveling and world schooling, like 2 different times on this trip, I have been on long plane travel days on my heavy days, right? And it's just like, I, you cannot, like, when you are getting on a plane, when you're boarding a plane and like waiting for takeoff, like, they do not care that you need to go to the bathroom every hour. Like,
Right.
that's not their concern. So, like, just eating it like candy. Hopefully, get at least 2 or 3 hours in between bathroom trips. So, yeah, good stuff.
And then trying to deal with that mess in a bathroom the size of a cubby.
Yeah.
Good
Right?
times.
Like,
Were you trying not to touch anything?
yeah, you don't want to touch anything. And like, and yeah, it is a must. Yeah, it's not fun. It's a scene.
Yeah.
Living the dream. Living the dream.
All right. Well, we are almost wrapped up with this book. We have a couple more talking points, but we wanted to remind you that we host a Patreon. We have different tiers of perks and benefits and all kinds of stuff over there. There's a general support level. So if you just love listening to our podcast and you're like, oh, here's like a tip, like a busking tip, there's one of those levels over there. Then there is a level where you'll receive a free themed unit study every month that is vetted, that is own voice focused, that is approaches learning from different ages, different angles. All of that is over there. And there's a whole bunch of them over there too. So you'll have access to a bunch of stuff. We put out one every month. And then our final and third tier, it's VIP. So it sounds super fancy. You'd be like, I'm a VIP, but we tried to make it super affordable. So it's $12 a month. And that one includes the unit study, and it also includes 2 live meetings per month. There's a homeschool Q&A session. So if you are entering a new phase of homeschooling, if you've hit a wall in homeschooling, you're brand new to homeschooling, come. We'll be more than happy to address your specific questions and answer those. And then we also have a social, which is nice because we see constantly online people who are like, I can't seem to find my people. I can't. Freaking hard, right? And so it's nice. We come together. It's a lovely group and we come together. We had it last night. So 2 nights ago, and my days are running together.
It's just in the middle of the night for us. So it's easy to not know for sure what night we're talking.
It was. Yeah. We haven't formatted for US time. And because neither one of us is in the US right now, it was a very late night, but we still had a great time. We just kind of chat about life and whatever, right? Stress and fun and laugh and, spring snacks. I brought a snack the other day. You can bring a margarita, like truly show up however you want. It's a really fun group. So come hang out with us anytime. We would love to welcome you. We do always have a coupon code running, so that if you just want to come and check it out, you're more than welcome to. Our current coupon code is FTP90. FTP stands for fuck the patriarchy, because that's kind of where we're at right now. But a rough January 2025. So that's where we're at. So that'll take 90% off your first month. So you can come hang out with us for like $1 for a month. So come hang out with us. And if you find that our primary episode this week was about self-care. If that's your $12 self-care spend every month, good on you. Come and hang out with us. We would love to participate in that with you. So yeah, we'll link it in the show notes. It's on our website. You can send us a DM. So come hang out. We'd love to meet you on a deeper level.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the Patreon is a great option. And I don't know, like, you're probably in the same boat, right? I find that right now I am supporting so many Patreon and Substack creators, and people because I get on social media and I'm doing the doom scrolling and I'm getting sucked into these things. And then the algorithm is feeding me more and more awful stuff that like some of it is important and it's good, but then some of it just like sucks me further and further into despair because things are a
Yeah.
real shit show right now. Right. And so like trying to be really strategic about, and honestly, I'm pretty disappointed with a lot of American news networks right now, and I don't really want to be spending my money there. And so going and finding the creators that are bringing value in a way that I really appreciate. And, you know, most of them I'm doing that like that basic $5 level where maybe I get their standard newsletter or whatever, but just that supporting of like, you're putting stuff out that matters, that's really good. And I want you to keep putting it out. Like these
Right.
times are hard and it's really easy to get like just disenchanted and just kind of so beat down and like, no, I really value what you're putting out there. I hope you keep doing it. Like, here's my kind of monthly support subscription kind of thing. So, yeah,
Mhm.
I definitely, I'm all over Patreon and Substack these days.
Yep. Yeah. We have quite a few running in our household as well. So
Yeah, right. I mean, it just feels like one of those things. I mean, yes, you can do donations to specific orgs, and we're definitely donating for all sorts of different things. But I just feel like this is kind of like the next evolution of social change and activism, right? Is supporting those creators that are putting things out there that actually really matter right now. Because
because I think a lot of times too, have you ever been involved in a conversation where people are expressing frustration over something and it's like somebody should really do something about that or somebody should really organize that, right? And so it's like, okay, but when the somebody finally steps up and does that thing, right? Then
yeah,
it's like if we don't have the time or the spoons or whatever it is to do that thing, let's then support the person who maybe also didn't have the time or the spoons, but was like, it's important enough that I'm going to do it, right? So off I go. So yeah,
yeah,
we
that's
can
it. This
support them
this
however
needs
we
to
can.
happen. Yeah, exactly. This needs to happen. This space needs to be created. And so, just sharing that little bit of support really can make a
Mhm.
difference.
Yeah, I totally
Right.
agree.
So anyway, we'll get back to book club.
It's a pause.
Yes.
Do we have to?
I mean, speaking of hell in a handbasket and everything being shit, back to menopause. Though on page 218, she discusses mental health disorders and mood changes. Uh, that was quite the transition and segue there. Not
The
even
whole United
intended.
States is a walking mental health. Like it's on one end of the spectrum or the other. There's a lot of mental health issues going on right now, right? Either despair or lunacy.
And cult following. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So I pulled out a quote. So she says, quote, research has consistently shown that entering menopause comes with an elevated risk of experiencing mental health issues such as depression and anxiety, and that shifts in mood, cognition, and emotional well being are common. So there you go, ladies. You've got that to look forward to.
Those of us who had that beforehand are really screwed.
Right?
And how it's going to get worse. I can't wait.
Fantastic. Fucking tastic.
Oh, can't wait.
Yeah. But I do want to say that I think it's really important to stress that this is common, right? Like if you're in your 40s and suddenly you're like, why am I struggling with this depression or this anxiety? Like it kind of came out of the blue, or it's like it's way worse than it was. Like, what is happening? It's important to know that it's just like postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety. Like there's all of this education now around postpartum anxiety and
Yep.
depression and what that looks like in supporting women. And and we know, right, because there's all this education and support around it now that it's real and it's common and there's nothing wrong with getting help and support to get through this time of massive hormonal change. Yet we're not talking about the fact that perimenopause, the whole perimenopause transition is a massive hormonal change, just like that. And you're very likely to have these same kinds of wildly fluctuating mental spaces. And, like let's be more vocal about that so that we can actually really address it.
Well, it's so true because we've talked over and over again throughout this entire book club about women going to the doctor with symptoms of perimenopause and being completely ignored or shut down or whatever, oh, it's all in your head. You should walk more, whatever, all of these things. Right. So it's interesting that you say that, because when I had my first kiddo, I've talked in previous episodes about the fact that it wasn't that like a baby story moment where they put him in my arms and it was like, angelic singing and a light shone down and he's perfect and I love him. Right. Like it took time. And I remember at about 2.5, 3 months, I think I was starting to be like, still like, I don't know, this kid, like he's okay, but like, really? And I called the doctor's office and I spoke with and they knew me, right? I had been in for all of my visits. It was a pretty small practice. So I called and I was like, listen, like, I like him. He's okay. But like, I don't know that I feel the way I'm supposed to feel about this kid, like, cause TV makes you think it's this other thing. And I had struggled tremendously with nursing. And so it was a slugfest in the beginning. I was in that office so fast your head would spin because they were afraid that I was going to drown him in a bathtub. And I was there so quick. And the doctor sat side by side with me. How are they? I was at a specialist, like all that. And it really turned out it wasn't anything. It wasn't like severe PPD or anything like that. I just needed time and it came and it was fine. But if you had gone in, if I go in as a 45-year-old woman and just be like, oh, they'd be like, well, you work and you have kids and you homeschool, and they'd probably guilt me for homeschooling because I took on more than they'd be like, well, if you didn't choose to homeschool, it probably wouldn't be so overwhelming for you. Right.
You should probably consider putting them in regular school. Maybe you'll
Right.
feel better.
Yeah. But when you're when you're postpartum, it's like, holy shit, she's going to drown her kids in a bathtub. We need to help this woman right away. Come menopause, it's like, have you considered, a glass of red wine and a bath? You're like, that's not actually a medical solution. I don't know if you're aware. Yeah, they are treated so very differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And no, I mean, I probably should have thought of it before, but in reading this, that it was really highlighted for me about how differently we treat it. And it's super unfair, right? Because with PPD and PPA, it's really like that kind of year after. And yeah, it can happen a little further out, or it might happen, really set in closer to the end of that year as your hormones are really settling back in. But it's a much smaller window that you're worried about
Of
there.
your
Like,
life, yeah.
yeah, perimenopause and postmenopause, this whole transition, 10, 15, for some women who are really unlucky, 20 years for this stupid transition to happen, right? I'm like, for 20 years, like, just eat some dark chocolate and find and practice self-care. That's all you
Right.
need.
Yeah, like not so much, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, hell, I was almost having a second child by the end of that first year of postpartum, right? I mean, I was there. I was 6 months pregnant at that point. So talk about a roller coaster and you have all this focus on you and all these appointments and how are you doing and this, that, and the other thing. And then on this end of the spectrum, nada, except being told that you're crazy and that it's all in your head.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
Well,
times.
yeah, exactly. The like exercise more, walk more. And even if they do automatically go to, let's put you on antidepressants, like, is that exactly where you need to be? Because it's not just normal depression or anxiety, right? There are a lot of things that factor into this. And like, are we looking at the whole picture and really addressing it the best way possible? Like, I don't know. Doesn't seem like anyone's really addressing anything around the menopausal transition in the best way possible. All right. So I will get off of that soapbox. I'll move on to my next point. It was on 228. This will also be another soapbox because it was musculoskeletal pain. So in this section, she had just had a discussion about fibromyalgia and menopause. And it was like, for me, because she's like really focusing on the fact that more women than men have fibromyalgia, which is true. And then she goes on to point out like how many more women are at least 45 or something. Can't remember the exact age, but like basically in this perimenopausal transition, get diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and that it's a lot of times probably incorrect and all of these kinds of things. And for me, I have fibromyalgia. I was diagnosed with it in my late 20s. So, like maybe it'll get a little bit worse with perimenopause stuff, but like I didn't love the way she was positioning it, especially because I know there are a lot of young women who already have fibromyalgia. And so, yeah. So again, she's going to sing the praises of the anti-inflammatory diet to fix your musculoskeletal pain. And look, in general, eat more fresh produce, whole grains, lean proteins, and, try to consume less overly processed and fried foods. Like, this isn't rocket science that your
Right.
body is going to be happier and healthier with these things, right? I don't think anyone is like, really? Like, fruits and vegetables and whole grains are a good thing? Like,
Hasn't anyone told me sooner?
exactly. But, I tried them all. Right. I got sick in my 20s. You're not supposed to get sick. You're not supposed to suddenly become disabled in your 20s. And I did. And so I tried it all. And I found that the vast majority of it didn't make a difference. I recently started doctoring with a new team of specialists, and one of them is a functional medicine doctor. And one of the very first things he asked me was if I had tried these different diets and what I found. And I was like, I have tried three-fourths of the ones that you just mentioned, and I found that none of them made a significant difference in the quality of my day-to-day living. Like, there were specific times in my treatments and things like that where certain things really made a big difference. There was a time when I was on really heavy IV medications twice daily, and I had to cut out all sugar and all caffeine, and it made a huge difference in how I felt. That's not the case, generally speaking, for me. I don't eat a ton of those things, but I can have it in moderation. I'm fine. And the functional medicine doctor was like, yeah, like they're fads for the most part, those diets. They're just these fads. And, like eating healthy, sure, that's going to make a difference for you. But these strict anti-inflammatory diets of like, don't eat this and you can't have that, and make sure you eat, 18 avocados and whatever the thing is, like it doesn't actually make a difference for the vast majority of people. So don't feel bad if you try it and you're like, where, like, this was supposed to be the magic thing and it's not. Like, it's far more fad than like researched. It helps 75% of people.
Like, or don't feel bad if you've tried it and you can't maintain it.
Yeah.
Right. Because with everything else that everybody's job, it's hard. It's hard.
And the thing is, it's a ton of work. And so if you
Yeah.
try it and it like makes you feel 5% better and you decide that you can't maintain it for that 5%, like that's freaking okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It is. Cause I've done like, like the whole 30 stuff and all that and whatever. And like, holy crap, it's a lot of work. Like it's so much. And just that's all you can think about for that time period. I mean, it's just so much planning and prep and shopping and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, we just did a whole episode on self-care and how difficult it is to find even like a sliver of time for yourself. And then if you find that sliver of time and now you're, spending all of it meal planning, like it's self-care, but is it self-care?
Yeah, that's not my version of self-care. I'll say
Right.
that. Like for some people, it might be. Some people might totally love that and want to be all in. And look, if that's you and like this healthy fitness journey thing is your self-care, as long as it's working for you and you're happy, by all means, go on with your best self. Much like my volunteering, right? I'm coming to the end of a 6-year term of like all in volunteering, and I loved it in the beginning. And now it's not working for me anymore. And so I'm going to let that go, right? Like, it's okay.
Huh?
Yeah.
It's the season.
Yep. The next thing I had was I feel like we're kind of getting to be a broken record. Like, just throw out names of awful things you can have and then be like, and there's nothing to help you. So on page 229, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, another sucks to be a stat. Research shows you are 2.4 times more likely to develop this if you're postmenopausal versus perimenopausal. So there you go, fun stuff. Enjoy your non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, ladies.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm world schooling and having some internet connection issues. So I've turned off my video. I'm still here, but if you're watching us, you just get my name right now. And we're going to give it a go to wrap up this episode with, I don't know, wonky internet. It is what it is. All right. So my next comment was on page 240. She's talking about sexual dysfunction. The bottom line here is that women are often too embarrassed to bring it up to their medical providers, but there are lots of options, right? And so I think, that's one of those like societal things. We're kind of programmed to not talk about it. And I think it's too bad. She estimates that nearly 50% of the patients in her menopause clinic have hypoactive sexual desire disorder, which means or is defined as persistent or recurrent lack of sexual fantasies and desire for sexual activity. And it's just like, yeah, I don't, I hope to never have that. If you're having it, it doesn't have to be. Talk to someone.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
it doesn't have to just be Viagra for the men. You can also still enjoy your sex life even as you age.
Mhm. It's
Nothing
supposed to
wrong
get
with
better as we age too. So if it's not, talk to somebody, right?
yeah.
Yeah. All right. My next note here was on 246. And she talks about pharmacologic options, but then also there's a section here on products and treatments. And I thought this in particular, I mean, if you go into, or so we're all upset with Target now because of their DEI rollbacks, right? But that's always kind of like what comes to mind for me when previously when I was thinking about like going to the store to buy like a cosmetic or something like that, right? Oh my gosh, it's like aisle upon aisle upon aisle upon aisle of this stuff, and you just don't know what to buy. And so I was like, I felt like this was really helpful as far as kind of narrowing it down to what she actually thinks is helpful and might help you eliminate some of the stuff that's more marketing gimmick. So I liked that list on 247. She talks about moisturizers with certain ingredients, very specific products here, topical retinoid. And then she gets into a thing too that I think like peels, fractional lasers, things like that that are probably not within most people's scope, but they're there if you're interested in hearing what she actually recommends works.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. And I mean, it's going to be hit or miss for each person, but it's nice to have a list of things to like try. And you should definitely do a little bit of research because different ones take a little bit longer, right? And like some of them, like you should expect your skin to look worse before it looks better and things like that. And that's information that's pretty easy to find on good old Google. I do want to just backtrack a quick second and say on page 243, first off, you'll be shocked to know that she believes eating an anti-inflammatory diet will help with sexual dysfunction, along with, regular exercise and stress reduction. You're just going to fit all of those things in and then have great sex. Good luck with that. But she also points out that educating yourself about menopausal changes, sexual health, and expectations during this whole transition can really help a lot. And she recommends two books. There's Dr. Kelly Casperson's book called You Are Not Broken. And she also recommends Dr. Emily Nagowski. We all know my problem with names, but the book title is Come As You Are. So You Are Not Broken and Come As You Are. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, I want to do a little bit more reading on this, might be worth checking out.
Yeah, those were good recommendations.
Yeah. Then last thing I had in this whole like toolkit was vertigo. I have a couple of friends who have been having a little bit of this. I know my mom has struggled with vertigo and in large part from something else, but I do wonder how much of the exacerbation or worsening of it maybe had to do with this menopausal transition and just she didn't get the care and the doctor she was seeing didn't have the knowledge because that's kind of like what this book talks about constantly, right? Is that doctors who are treating these things treat them in silos without taking into consideration the fact that dropping estrogen can, in fact, cause vertigo. It can, in fact, cause kidney stones. It can, in fact, cause frozen shoulder, and just on and on and on, right? But again, it kind of goes back to that idea for me of like, I think you should just get this book and have it and look up any new symptom or issue so that you know, and you're going into your appointment armed with the knowledge of like, yes, we can test and see if it's something else, but it's also worth noting this is a common thing that happens. And she brings receipts, right? We're going to talk about that here in a minute, but in I don't remember which appendix it is, but there's 20 plus pages of selected resources that are actually like peer reviewed articles and things like that that show like this comes from this. There's studies on that. We know this because they have actually had studies on it. It's just that most doctors aren't reading and researching those studies in that specific thing.
Yeah. So then the rest of the book is resources. I was reading and I was like, oh man, I have a lot of pages to go. And then I was like, oh no, wait, there's actually a lot of stuff back here that's not. I mean, there's a huge resource section where she shares her sources for all of her statistics that she shared. So there's a lot more at the back of the book that's pretty awesome too.
Yeah. I think I'm not a I don't write in my books and I'm not going to cut pages out. So it didn't exactly appeal to me, right? Like I'm really anal about that stuff and I'm okay
Dotted
with that.
lines through me. Yeah.
Yeah, but she's got a list of just helpful resources. She has updated statements and stats on the use of menopausal hormone therapy. It's only a couple pages, so it'd be quick and easy to read. But I thought, if you're okay with cutting those pages out, it would be an easy thing to give to a primary care provider that you're trying to work with and, like really easy jumping off point for them to read and do more research if they're interested. If they're not interested and they don't do any more research, you need to find yourself a different doctor for that specific thing at least. And then she also has a cutout version of the menopause symptom scoring sheet that we had talked about before. I'm not 100% sure why you need to cut one out and take it with you, but it's there if that's your thing. And she's got a hot flash diary symptom journal. For me, this was one of those things like good idea. I was completely underwhelmed by the actual page layout. I was curious to get back to it and be like, oh, and then it's just like a bunch of lines. So maybe make your own if you can start tracking those
So then
things.
I'd have a notepad on my phone because I've always got my phone with me, but I'm not always going to have this piece of paper with me. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, no, exactly.
yeah, I totally agree. But the whole book I thought has been really informative, well laid out, well researched, just a good reference material to have on hand. It's definitely been a worthwhile read for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm not sad that we read it. I You had kind of mentioned before that it's almost like an encyclopedia, and I do feel that that's true. It made it maybe a little hard to read kind of straight through in a book club setting because there were a lot of things that were like, okay, it seems like you're just reading the same things over and over. But I do think I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I have it. This won't be one of the books that I donate straight away after book club is done. And I definitely have those.
Yeah, I
Actually, I
agree.
have some that I recycle because I don't want anyone else to read them. So I just don't even donate them. But yeah, I'll be keeping this one.
Hmm. I like it. All
All
right. So
right.
our first book of season two.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah, right.
times.
We got it done. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really hope you'll tune in next week as we dig into our new book we mentioned before, Soul School. We did a pre read of it and we're excited to actually really dig in and talk about it because it's just really a great book. And yeah, in the meantime, happy homeschooling.
Yeah. Have an awesome day.